my name is Wambera Mugo, a program assistant at the Youth Café, which is a youth-led, youth-serving, Pan-African non-profit organization with its headquarters in Nairobi, Kenya. It is an honor to share the youth perspective on democracy and civic spaces. Abraham Lincoln once said, "Democracy is the government of the people, by the people, for the people." At the Youth Café, we strongly resonate with this idea. The majority of Africa's population comprises the youth, and we believe that it is imperative for youth voices to be included in the governance of a country. It is often observed that young people are increasingly skeptical of the conventional model of democracy, but at the same time, they can and do connect and give voice on issues that matter, using new media to fight injustice, discrimination, human rights abuses, reviving student activism to give voice to the disempowered, taking individual and collective action for what they believe in, from sustainable consumer habits to participatory greening of cities, from online petition activism to social entrepreneurship. The values of freedom, respect for human rights, and the principles of holding periodic and genuine elections by universal suffrage are essential elements of democracy. In turn, democracy provides a natural environment for the protection and effective realization of human rights. These values are embodied in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and further developed in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, which enshrines a host of political rights and civil liberties underpinning meaningful democracies. At the Youth Café, we work on an overarching goal around youth inclusion in democratic processes in order to increase the number of informed youths participating in key processes such as elections, catalyzing important changes in political systems, intergenerational power sharing, and co-leadership dynamics, as well as access to economic opportunities. Apart from that, we work to increase the participation of marginalized groups like women in representative democracy. The objectives of our programming on youth inclusion in the democratic space include: firstly, enhancing credible and reliable information regarding electoral and political processes available to the youth. Secondly, increase youth participation in current elections and later elections through reintroducing them to the democratic participation tools that they have at their disposal and encouraging them to be more actively take part in electoral processes. Thirdly, creating long-term evidence-based social media strategies and in-person training curriculum materials that will incorporate comprehensive civic education for youth on democratic processes and then better understand their democratic and civil rights. Fourthly, developing education approaches on voting rights and the roles of youth in peaceful elections through advocacy campaigns whereby youth lobby for elections that are violence-free and not manipulated through social media. An example of this work is the Kenya Youth Manifesto, which is the Youth Café's authored in collaboration with young people. The Kenya Youth Manifesto opened interaction that fed into the general democratic scene and stimulated proposals of transformative solutions, marking a departure from past elections. Some of its provisions were a call for free universal secondary schooling and the increased allocations of funds for youth enterprises. Making a youth manifesto that is representative of the entire country's youth was an ambitious undertaking. Hence, there was a need to collaborate with numerous individuals, youth-serving organizations, political parties, and key development stakeholders. It is worth noting that the non-participant collaborative and inclusive writing process challenged Kenyan's norms and practices with respect to youth engagement, especially during elections. However, we see challenges to youth participation, particularly with regards to the shrinking or closing of civic spaces. The Youth Café being a renowned convener, we see civic spaces as an environment that brings the public together, shares their interests and concerns, acts individually and collectively against discrimination, against young men and women who influence and shape their societies. Furthermore, civic spaces enables young people to have the freedom to assemble, express and develop themselves and make decisions concerning their lives and society and ensure that their voices are heard digitally and offline or on-site. The narrowing civic spaces hinders opportunities for young youth to engage in governance and participate in political and decision-making processes, depending largely on political, socioeconomic, and cultural contexts, where social norms in many parts of the world result in multiple forms of exclusion of young men and women. Additionally, for young activists and youth-serving organizations in a range of countries in Africa, the civic space is shrinking or even closing. Recently, governments such as Senegal, Tanzania, Uganda, and Zambia require CSOs to undergo cumbersome registration processes and criminalize those that fail to register themselves. The government in Niger, meanwhile, has banned several CSOs and prohibited others from traveling within specific parts of the country. Human rights groups in Rwanda continuously report a fear of government-sponsored harassment, and some have reacted by self-censoring their publication. Here in Kenya, the government has significantly increased its acts of harassment against human rights defenders, including the arbitrary arrest of civil society members, as well as conducting raids on their offices and homes. On a number of occasions, government security personnel have used lethal force against demonstrators, leaving activists dead or injured. The government has also used anti-terrorism measures as a pretext for clamping down on civil society activism. The closure of civic space also has serious implications for the attainment of sustainable development goals, which accords a central role to us as young people. As part of Goal 6, governments and other development actors commit to building responsive, inclusive, participatory and representative decision-making at all levels, and promise to ensure public access to information and protect fundamental freedoms. In accordance with the national legislation and international agreements, in addition, under Goal 17, one target is to encourage and promote effective public-private, and civil society partnerships. The shrinking or closure of civic space puts progress towards these goals at risk. We as young people also play a critical role in advocating for the achievement of the remaining Sustainable Development Goals, holding the government to account for delivering on its commitments, while in many cases helping provide service directly to the most vulnerable of citizens. The time for action has come. To permit ignorance is to empower it. To do nothing, as our leaders proclaim absurdities, is a crime of complacency. We, the youth, are not only the authors of the future, but the architects of the present. We must be mindful, however, that change is not possible by efforts of one person standing alone. We must come together in solidarity and harness our youthful audacity to create a positive impact in the world around us, and we must start at the heart of our society, democracy.